And a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back to Chris and Sports, a quickie article, because you may be confused as to I am as to why this is even an article in the first place, because as we know, Chris is not especially the healthiest human being on the world, and as a result, it's basically he gets winded through the mere act of walking. And bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I've known people in my time who got winded by just breathing, and they don't even have issues with asthma or anything like that. That's just how lazy some people can get, owing to the diet, the environment, and just whether or not they really want to do anything whatsoever. So here we go. Sports is a term that most often refers to competitive games involving heavy physical activity that may be very important to a culture. Some activity, for example, I happen to know that the NFL are starting their draft picks since the season is meant to begin in roughly 5.5 months. Although I've jokingly said it's because Americans have no culture whatsoever, so they've got to make a big thing out of something. But to be fair, the draws are actually quite impressive just to the gatherings that take place in each city, and well, it's always something that's pretty talked about somewhat. It's not really talked about too much on this side of the Atlantic, but it is what it is. Some activities that don't quite fit that definition, such as esports, are sometimes also considered sports. They absolutely are, but there you are. Upon first glance, one may assume that Chris has never once thought of throwing a ball or running a mile, but that would be wrong. In fact, Chris has had several interactions with sports throughout his life, both as an athlete and as a fan. Managerial career. No doubt Chris's most famous role in the sports world was as the manager/water boy of the Manchester High School varsity basketball team. Unfortunately, Chris is no Greg Popovich, so you can only imagine how well this is going to turn out. Of course, the role of a water boy and a manager are two very different things. And while a student manager of a sports team may very well sometimes perform simple services for the team, such as providing water, it is more likely Chris was simply given the title as a gesture. There are not many other details known about what Chris did during this tenure, other than he shared this position with fellow student Joseph Herring, who made enough of an impression on Chris to appear in Sonichu issue 7. Chris only served as manager for a single season. As I said before, Greg Popovich has been manager for 28 years. So there, you didn't think I knew it all, did you? Whether he lost interest or was denied a second season in his sophomore year is anyone's guess. Chris, the athlete. While Chris never formally played any sports for an organised team, he has played casually by himself and with others, and has bragged several times about his incredible athletic prowess. On his first Match.com profile, Chris claimed that he played many popular sports, and in Casey Call number 9, he would attempt to defend his masculinity by stating the same. It has been claimed by Sonichu himself that Chris's counterpart in C197 is very talented at some particular sports. In short, Chris's feats on the sporting fields are something he is very willing to brag about, whether they warrant it or not. For example, basketball. Chris is not limited to the sidelines of the basketball court. During his time in jail, Chris reported in a letter that he would sometimes go to the basketball court and shoot some hoops with Bionic on Central Virginia Regional Jail's half court. Tragically, in a letter to Eels and the Eggman, Chris would lament being banned from the recreation room, cutting his basketball career short before the NBA had chance to notice him. Football. In Chris's home country of the United States, football is the name of a sport that involves tackling and touchdowns. In most other parts of the world, football is what Chris and his fellow Americans would call soccer. Chris has a history with both variations of the sport. In his video, A Few Kicks, Chris plays around with a soccer ball as Tushalecio plays louder than he speaks. Chris's ownership of a soccer ball implies an interest in playing soccer, but the lack of any feats more than impressive kicking the ball kind of far makes it seem that is another instance of Chris taking a mild interest in something, making a video about it, and leaving it be. Oh, and by the way, in case you are curious about what the actual video is, it's, well, a YouTube video on the 18th of December 2015 by Chris. Despite being uploaded as unlisted, it was nonetheless leaked to the Kiwi Farms chat room. In it, Chris spends a few minutes surprisingly getting some exercise outside. That's roughly about it. And while there's not really much to say about like whatever is playing in the background, the only thing you need to know is that, listen, I'm no Eddie Howe, Arson. Well, first of all, could it have helped Chris maybe if he got like maybe a bigger t-shirt or a jersey of some kind? Because the fact is that it's almost as though his actual belly is, it's like the second you take away like his shirt or any of his like flesh is exposed, it almost looks as, you're almost led to believe that how is his flesh or his body even meant to be contained in his clothing at all? I would also argue about why, what exactly Chris is trying to do. Because, again, listen, as an Englishman, I can tell you that football is golden nurse, especially from where I live and stuff like that. And I can honestly say, just by looking at this, it'll be pretty hard to tackle Chris in many ways because, well, Chris is incredibly robust as it is, and it would be pretty difficult to like knock her over, I suppose. And yeah, you may want to, yeah, exactly. Get your, is he wearing? Oh no, get your shoes laced up. Yeah, that's a good start, Chris. Yeah, I don't know if you were expecting anything like impressive or any other commentary, because the video is, well, just this. It's Chris kicking a ball around, filmed basically outside his house. Yeah, there's not really much else to say apart from that. In a twist that is unsurprising and part extremely surprising, Chris has experience with American football. In his emails with Jackie, Chris confirms that while he was never the most interested in it, Chris would play football during PE class. According to Chris, the class would be split between boys and girls. Presumably they would each be further divided into two teams and would play against each other. Chris didn't enjoy the levels of violence displayed by the jerks and was eventually placed to play among the girls by special request. In spite of his limited experience with both forms of football, Chris directly references both among the sports he plays on his first Match.com profile and cites them both immediately when Casey suggests that volleyball is not a very masculine activity. Screw you, Casey, yes it is. It seems that for Chris, simply having played before is enough to call himself a player if it helps his love quest, because of course it would do. Running. Like football, running is a sport that takes many forms. Considering that Chris's lifelong hero and his prized creation are both runners, one can imagine that Chris has a certain level of appreciation for running sports as well. In his famous December 2009 video Solitude's Edge, you know what, rather than describing it, I think I may as well just show you it, because I know I've showed this like one or two times before, but artist depiction, that's kind of mean. So here it is.
Hello there, fans. This is Christian Chandler here live at the downtown mall, where for the science show franchise for State of Quickville and everything like that, I'm going to do a parquet from this point all the way down to the parking garage, where at the end we will get a nice view of the tent-style theater that's down there where events are held. And for best viewing, the camera will be hung around my neck right about here, so you get to see what I see from that point of view. And also, there may be one or two pauses where I have to catch my breath. Of course, that's to expect, even from the best runner. Alright, here we go.
Now, I know immediately what you're probably thinking to yourself is, what the hell is actually going on? So I'll do my best to describe it for you. So the idea was that Chris was prompted by a video game somebody showed to him called Mirror's Edge, which is a video game released by Electronic Arts and is famous for its depictions of freestyle parkour. And somebody decided to get Chris the idea of doing running, because this was something that even Casey suggested they should do at some point. But what actually happens is that, well, outside of the fact that Chris mispronounces parkour as parquet, which is a brand of squeezable butter, what happens is that Chris just runs from one place to another, having to pause, and because you can see where like the camera cuts sporadically between certain frames. And the video, I sure hope you weren't looking forward to seeing any actual displays of parkour, like just like there's one. If you were, there's like no parkour going on whatsoever, and it's literally just Chris running across downtown Charlottesville. I agree, ladies, and by the way, the video is just this. There's very little else to it, and to be honest, Chris's comments about even the best runner would need to catch their breath, well, on occasion, well, no, that's not even true either. Professionals would actually go under rigorous training to know how they could actually pace themselves so they could get quick, sporadic air intakes, in through the ears and out through the mouth. They would know how to do this, and, well, usually they sort of have the sort of physiques as well as a lack of issues with cholesterol in their blood in order to help them to do this. Not to mention actually having the sort of muscular structure, especially in their legs, so that they don't strain themselves from an unsurprising level of physical activity. That's the thing. I don't know whether or not Chris ever, tried to, rehearse this by training or doing some warm-ups before this. But no, it's hardly like that. And by the way, yeah, just I appreciate Chris trying, however, I suppose is the way to do this. But the problem is that, well, yeah, I don't really know what else to say apart from that, well, it's not that I'm disappointed at Chris, but rather, it probably would have been in the best interest for Chris if he, well, looked into what he was doing and he knew what the hell parkour was, because, well, he does do it, but he doesn't do any parkour whatsoever, and he takes frequent breaks, at least 5 throughout this video.
The amphitheater. Thank you for your continued support.
Also, I fail to believe that people who wear glasses, it's probably not a good idea for Chris to start running for doing stuff like that, but Damon fan fit. Okay, whatever. That's enough of that. So moving on, shall we? Chris claims he upped his time jogging to. Okay, let's giving Chris a shade. Okay, during his run, Chris seemingly takes many breaks during cuts in the video. Given Chris's shape, what many would consider this excusable. What is noticeable is that at the beginning of the video, Chris states a belief that all runners do this. Jogging was a topic discussed by Chris and Casey quite often in their calls earlier that same year. The troll behind the Casey persona acted quite bothered with Chris's lacking in ability, criticizing him for only being able to jog for 3 minutes. Time in Casey call number 19. In Casey call 21, Chris claims that he has upped his time jogging to 5 minutes. Still unimpressed, Casey suggests that Chris ought to record himself running so that she could tell him how to improve. Chris makes this the excuse that it would be difficult for him to film himself jogging due to the way he swings his arms. Casey replies that when they go jogging, one is supposed to keep their arms by their side. Some video game characters will swing their arms stretched out beside them while running, so it is possible that Chris picked up the habit from them. Regardless, when Casey suggests that Chris should at least set the camera in a stationary position and jog in front of it, Chris says that he will think about it and, well, left it at that. He did be running. Volleyball. One of the sports that Chris is supposedly so skilled at in our sister dimension is volleyball. This was claimed post-transition which means it's possible that volleyball's listing was influenced by an aforementioned comment made by Casey, that volleyball was really a girl sport. Fuck you, Casey, after Chris listed playing it in high school as a boy thing. However, that is just speculation and cannot be confirmed. Other. When Chris lists sports he's played, baseball is usually among them. Despite this, no stories of Chris playing baseball seem to exist. However, on an OkCupid profile, Chris claims that baseball sucks. A similar situation exists regarding tennis, where he knows that Chris took a class on the game in college, but that is all. As for esports, Chris has only gotten into playing competitive games online relatively recently as of the Revelation saga, with Tetris 99 being a current favourite since just before the jail saga. And, well, I guess that's that. So, I don't really know what else I'm meant to add apart from this. It's kind of interesting, however, the idea that it's sports or doing something competitive physically wasn't even completely lost on Chris. And it's, I gotta say, for as short as it is, it's always kind of, I can't say that it was, there wasn't really much else Chris could do, but this is like one of those things where Chris would be judged purely on his physical merits. And, well, if Chris really did want to take out the time to actually do stuff like this, then who knows, things might have been a bit different, or it might have provided a very unique outlet for Chris. But it's not really an autism thing. It's just sort of, well, if Chris could be interested or bothered to do it at all. So that's roughly that. And yeah, I don't know why Casey thinks volleyball is just a girl sport. Yeah, I mean, what other sports does she think's girly? Like water polo, badminton, tennis, cricket. You know what I mean? Ice hockey? Absolutely no, not really. She would probably say something like ballet or figure ice skating would have been girl sports as well. So there you are. Thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.